So, in the last two videos that I did, I was talking about, you know, shadow work, dark night of the soul, eclipsing. And I want to talk about that song, Sympathy for the Devil. And Mark Twain, who said, or asked the question, who prays for Satan? And I did get to a place where I actually said that to myself before I even read the quote. And it was in 2006, I believe, 2005, the winter of 2005. I was in San Diego County, South San Diego County, living there. And, I started thinking, because at the time I was pursuing Christianity, and I was like, wait a minute, and I realized, and I didn't fully realize at the time, that just came to me as that question, shouldn't I be praying for the devil? And that was right on target. I think Mark Twain was on target. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. So it's, that's a no-brainer, right? So we sympathy for the devil. So, the lyric goes, after all, it was you and me. I don't know that it was you and me directly, but the dynamic, yes. And since the songwriter is utilizing Satan, right, he can go ahead and say that in the song, that it was you and me. But to be more specific, I think what he's trying to say is that we attach ourselves to these villains like Satan and whatnot, because human beings want to externalize their shadow self. Because we naturally avoid coming to consciousness about unpleasant things in ourselves. Guilt, shame, jealousy, whatnot. And, so I took that, that sympathy for the devil, and I started looking, and I said, wait a minute. The Bible is telling us that, God created man, but before he created man, he created Satan, right? Did he make a mistake? No, it's because we need to have a villain, because we don't or can't right away accept the villain within us. There's natural conflict within a human being. It's conflict within our physiology, within our makeup, within our the conflict between our instincts and our survival as an individual. There's all these conflicts going on, and it's just easier to deal with if at first we just attribute it all to Satan. Problem is, we can't stay there. A lot of people stay there. If you stay there, you're going to end up on the cross over and over again. The victim. You're supposed to transcend that. But they don't, they kind of allude to that when they talked about the fact that during the 3 days after Christ died, he goes to hell and gets the keys to hell. But they don't really tell you that the keys to hell is to stop and own this stuff as a part of the conflict that you have to deal with as a mortal human being. And that, this characterization, the Satan, the devil made me do it stuff, is eventually got to go. Otherwise, history is going to repeat itself and you're going to end up on the cross again. Now, there's enough of positive religious teaching to keep you strung along over and over again through each and every crucifixion that you go through in life. Maybe if you belong to a church, there's enough support for that. The bottom line is that when you die, even though you might have people in the room with you, you're likely going to be the only person dying in that room unless you're in a trench with somebody and you and your buddy are dying together. And if you're dying alone and slowly and consciously, it's going to be a rough ride. So I don't want to leave you there just because I'm a mom, and I'm going to hold your hand for a few minutes through that. But a lot of the things that we're afraid of to own, negative feelings like, say, guilt or whatever, this eclipsing of the sun, this eclipse turns out to be a bunch of smoke and mirrors. It's just your fear. And allowing your fear to drive your behavior when all it is fear and your instinct to avoid unpleasant things, including unpleasant feelings that you are stimulated by events. As long as you allow that to dictate the way your life goes, the lonelier you're going to feel, the more, what are you going to call it? Victimized you're going to feel when you're dying, if you're conscious. I think the reality is that while a lot of people lose people along the way, we lose them to suicide, we lose them to car accidents, we lose them to cancer, we lose them to this, that, the other. I think the reality is the vast majority of people end up in nursing homes, dying slowly, and people are talking about the epidemic of Alzheimer's, and ignorance is bliss. I don't think ignorance is bliss. And I'll tell you from firsthand experience of taking care of a person with Alzheimer's, they do have a clue that there's something wrong with them. My mother-in-law said so, not knowing what was wrong with her. She said, "There's something wrong with me, isn't there?" Now that's a pretty nasty place to be, don't you think? There's something wrong with me. I don't know what it is, but there's something wrong with me. Very wrong. And she's like really emotionally vulnerable when she's saying this. I wouldn't call that bliss. Ignorance is not bliss. It's just ignorance. Alzheimer's is not going to save you from this problem of dealing with, eventually it's going to catch up to you, the mortality thing. It's going to catch up to me, you, everybody. So you say, well, then why think about it? If you can't tolerate this, that's a sure sign that you're doing a lot of crap to avoid it. And if you're doing a lot of crap to avoid it, it means you're busy mood altering or drugging yourself or whatever your addictions are. You're not doing the shadow work. It's going to empower you in your life to get to a place of self-discovery of what you want, irrespective of what your family wants, society wants. You free yourself from all that bondage. So it's a good thing if you're not a drug addict and alcoholic to be like exposing yourself to the nitty-gritty of mortality, because maybe it will give rise to your hitting bottom and really changing your life. Because in 12-step programs, they really don't want to deal with you until you've hit bottom. Sponsors don't want to sponsor you until you've hit bottom and are willing to do anything in order. And that includes shadow work, the stuff we want to avoid. And so I'm sorry for bringing you here, but I'm not sorry. Now, I'm not going to leave you there, because I'm going to invite you to start viewing some of the other videos, to start doing some shadow work, and get rid of that eclipse in your life, or those eclipses, so that life becomes a higher quality of life. It's more vivid. The color comes back. You feel young again, right? And you start gaining control. Because once you've done the shadow work one time, now you have the ammunition to know that it works. You can take control of your life, how you feel and how you respond instinctively, naturally, as long as you keep cleaning house. The problem with a lot of 12-step programs is they stop with the first inventory that they do on drugs and alcohol, and they don't apply it as they teach you in the big book to apply it in all areas of your life. It's taught that way. They repeat it over and over again in meetings, and yet people don't do it. Because it's tough stuff. It's tough stuff. So you want to avoid it. You're trying to avoid pain at all costs, even emotional pain. That's one of the instincts that's working against you. That you want to avoid that pain, that reality, that dark side of your mortality. But if you avoid the pain, you avoid the gain. No pain, no gain. It's the way it is.